just been about survival of the fittest.
He wants to turn America into a European-style social welfare state.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our debut podcast here where myself, Matt Schneider, and my co-host, James Saratella, discuss the week's events in politics. And we come from different political viewpoints, so we are going to do this in a form of a debate, but a respectful one, with a respectful tone. Isn't that right, James? I'm excited, are you?
I am.
And we should say for the audience also that I come from the conservative viewpoint and you come from the liberal viewpoint.
I am progressively minded, yes.
You're progressive minded, and I think, but what makes both of us unique is that we're not ideologues, necessarily. We are able to see...
Well, you can speak for yourself.
You're right, I should speak for myself.
I mean, look,
okay. And actually, there's nothing wrong with ideologues. So, well, let me clarify what I'm saying. I think we both are willing to hear out the other point of view. We're not closed-minded.
Right.
You'll hear out the person, and then you'll close your mind.
Okay.
Right?
Well, in this day and age, there are people that tend to be a little bit more closed-minded and not hearing the other side. So, but we won't.
Right. No, that's fine. You should take them on. Criticize them. That's welcome here on this show. So we want vigorous debate.
Okay.
So let's get vigorous. Okay. So my opening salvo here is that we're talking about the Republican nominees for president, and my personal pick that is someone who can beat President Obama, because I think that's something vital to be done in this upcoming election cycle. And in my view, there's really only two people who can beat Obama. It's Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich. I think both of them can do it, and I would be happy with either as a candidate to do it. I'm curious what your take, though, is on these Republican nominees, and who in particular, I guess just to get the ball rolling, would you find least offensive to win the nomination and would do the least damage as president if needed to be?
From my perspective.
From your perspective,
well,
yeah.
I can say this much, that I don't necessarily agree with you. I think that probably the only candidate, in my view, that can beat Obama is Romney. I don't think Gingrich can beat him. But having said that, I think that the one who's probably the less poisonous is Romney.
Well, the argument which I tend to subscribe to is that Mitt Romney is such a moderate in the sense that he attempts to be all things to all people, that ultimately, without giving a huge contrast between President Obama, most people won't be excited to go out and vote for Mitt Romney. And my only thinking with Newt Gingrich is that he's someone who could draw a distinct contrast with Obama, especially on a debate stage, but also in interviews up until the general election. And ultimately, that could inspire people and energize people to go out and vote against Obama.
Yeah, but see, that's where I don't agree with you, because I think that what ends up happening in every presidential election is you have the right that's going to vote for the Republicans that are going to vote for their candidate, and you have the left, the Democrats, that are going to vote for their candidate, and it's always the independents that are up in the air. And so,
but that's what I think is a conventional wisdom, which is somewhat screwed and annoying.
Well, I think my point of view is that the conventional wisdom in that sense is still the reality, where what you're touching on that I agree with, that it's firing up your base and the turnout is so important. That's something we saw with Obama in 2008. He was able to get a high turnout on the
right, and it's actually something that Bush did also. I mean,
but also, having said that, that's a big part of it, but I also think that a big part of it is the middle voters, that it can go either way, especially what you could have in a candidate that is very extreme. Some of these Republicans are very extreme this year. They will alienate those middle-of-the-road voters that won't vote for them.
I mean, I agree. I mean, for instance, Rick Santorum, I think, is someone so extreme
he won't
that...
He won't get
I mean, luckily he won't get it, so he's not even worth talking about. But my ultimate thought is, with Mitt Romney, I'm just a little worried that people are not going to be energetically, enthusiastically supporting him.
You know, I find that argument so interesting because I don't know how many people really have that view on the Republican side, because Romney seems to me the most presidential out of all the clowns on the stage. He's the one that looks the part, carries himself as he's, you know, as if he's going to take the part. Whereas Newt Gingrich just wants to say whatever crazy thing comes to his mind at any time. And while Mitt Romney is one who's prone to gaffes too, as we've seen recently with "I will fire people" and, you know, his uncomfortable interview with Brett Baer, but, you know, Romney seems presidential. Okay,
well, let me take issue with a few things you said just then, because I don't understand this argument that most of these people are clowns. Because what are you basing that on?
Well, you just pointed out Rick Santorum. Is he not a clown?
I don't think he's a clown. I think he has extreme views, but I don't think he's a clown.
We're in 2012, right? And Rick Santorum says that states, if they want, can ban contraceptives.
Right? Does that make him a clown, though? I think that makes him he has views that are outside the mainstream.
Outside the mainstream, that essentially means that if a state wanted to follow Rick Santorum's point of view, and assuming it were legal, although it's not, and we all know it's not, that they could pass a law banning contraceptives, we could have teenagers running around with diseases and bumps in their stomach.
Whoops.
We wouldn't be allowed to have condoms sold to pharmacies.
Right, but this is such a side issue, and this is actually an interesting point you raised, because this was brought up at a recent Republican debate also, which ABC commentator George Stephanopoulos spent literally like 20 minutes wasting time discussing this non-issue. Because just because Rick Santorum said one thing on a campaign trail somewhere doesn't mean it's of national importance, and it doesn't mean it needs to be highlighted constantly and repeatedly. I mean, it's a way to distort the image of the Republican candidates and to make them further outside of the mainstream than they really are.
Fine, but a Rick Santorum, he plays up those extreme views. He does. And then if you take some of the other candidates, just to follow up on your original question, you know, how are they all clowns? I mean, if you want to start with Herman Cain, who had no business in the race, in my opinion. I mean, he has no experience. And then Rick Perry, who continuously, he cannot grasp basic concepts. That's clownish.
And let me explain to you why I think a lot of people find such criticism that you've just said, that's echoed a lot by a lot of liberal commentators, to be completely outlandish. Because President Obama himself, when he was campaigning, said some extreme things that wasn't highlighted later on and repeated frequently. Like, he'd say people in small towns cling to guns and religion. I mean, that's something that, if he was a Republican candidate saying that, would have been trumpeted by the media repeatedly until he was driven out of the mainstream and portrayed as a clown also. And similarly, President Obama has verbal gaffes all the time. He says there's 57 states in the country, that he read off of teleprompter wrong words. So I'm just saying...
I don't disagree with that.
So I'm saying that Rick Perry clearly is not a good speaker.
But those aren't gaffes. Those are major meltdowns. That's a major meltdown. The oops was a major meltdown.
That was embarrassing.
Not knowing anything about Libya was a major meltdown. Pick up the newspaper. It's in the front page every day while it's going on.
These are not meltdowns. They're more people who aren't skilled at running for president, which I will grant you. I
guess we'll just have to agree to disagree on that.
Moving on then, let's get rid of some of the clowns, as you like to call them, and talk about who I think are the two most viable candidates, Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich. And what's picking up a lot of heat lately is this attack on Mitt Romney's arguably aggressively capitalistic behavior, which Newt Gingrich is attacking him for, which is a preview of what President Obama might be attacking him for also. And it's potentially exposing a vulnerability that Romney might have in the general election, and I guess let's discuss that. Do you think that that's a fair criticism of Romney? Do you think Obama will be in the right to make that criticism?
Well, I think it's absolutely a fair cristicize of Romney, and I think...
I mean, I certainly do not think it is, so let me hear your argument, and I will rip it apart.
Well, first, let's just stay on that note. I do think that exposes a tremendous vulnerability for Romney if he does get the nomination, that he may be answering the Bain questions for some time to come, and, you know, at this juncture, with the 99% versus the 1%, there's a lot of talk of income disparity in this country and the widening income gap. I do think that this could really do damage to him in terms of his likability.
I mean, I like Newt Gingrich a lot, and this is, I think, his one minor misstep as of now, going after Romney for just being a businessman. But, because you really, even what you just described, didn't outline what Romney did wrong.
No, it's not.
And if you're saying he didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but that it's just wrong to be a businessman, a successful businessman, in the 1%, then that's sort of an awkward situation.
No, you know
and I think it's a losing argument, because I think a lot of people in America don't begrudge success the way President Obama, frankly, does, and the way he hopes to rev up people to begrudge that success also.
I mean, that's a valid point. Romney didn't do anything wrong or anything illegal that we're aware of based on what we know. And I actually don't agree with the idea that Obama's pitting people against each other. He made it very clear in his speech in Kansas that he wasn't saying it's the 99% versus the 1%. We're all Americans here, and it's about American values. It's not about,
See, honestly, I have no clue what he was saying in that speech, other than to suggest that he is the president of the 99%, and that because in his mind, 99 if he could get 99% of the people voting for him, he wins again.
I don't think that's what he was saying. I think what he was saying is the 99% needs better action by their leaders in terms of making sure that they're also taken care of, and there's more fairness.
And this is
he's not saying I don't represent the 1%. I don't think he was saying that. But going back, let's take a step back. Your question about the Romney Bain Capital issue. I don't think that it's wrong, but I do think it shows something about Romney, and in terms of Romney campaigning, saying, I'm for you, I'm for the middle class, and I know what it's like to be in fear of losing your job. I was afraid of getting pink slips too when I was in the workplace. That to me is not credible, and that goes to Romney's problem.
It might not be credible. I'm not just
saying anything he can to get votes. Look, Romney needs to level with the American people and say, I'm a rich businessman, I'm a successful businessman. There's nothing wrong with that. I epitomize success in this country. Don't try to sit there and sympathize or empathize with the working class people. The way he's doing it, that's not. That's not him.
And this is what's going to be unique about our show right here. Are you ready? I want to elevate this discussion a notch higher.
Okay, fine.
Are you ready?
You're right.
Like, you're 100% right that he comes across as very insincere when he does that.
Very insincere.
And Obama might come across as more sincere when he's attempting to feel the pain of the poor people. My ultimate argument, why I ultimately think whoever the Republican nominee deserves to beat Obama, should beat Obama, and will beat Obama, is because I think most Americans are now above this rhetoric, and above deciding a president based on political games and who looks the best, sounds the best. In reality, I think we're now at a point where people are actually going to say to themselves when they go into the voting booth, who is actually going to do this job the best, regardless of how credible they seem, regardless if I want to have a beer with them, regardless of who I like. And I think at the end of the day, Mitt Romney's greatest strength is that in every job he's done, he's succeeded at. He may not have been liked, he may not have been revving up people to support him in each thing, he might not even have core values, but he succeeds at the task that's put in front of him. And I think he will be a better president than Obama.
Okay, I get your point, but I don't think that those other issues about seeming presidential and being able to empathize, etc., are meaningless. I think they matter. I don't necessarily think that those are very important issues, although they definitely factor into people's minds. But I think generally, in most elections, people do vote who they think is going to be the best leader. And also, in this day and age, with the economy in the uncertain state it's in, people want a leader who they feel is going to do the best job at moving the economy forward and keeping it growing at this point. And Romney's pitch is that the economy's really bad, one. Two, it's not getting better. And three, it's all because of Obama. He caused this with his intense regulations on businesses. He wants to tax everyone that's supposedly causing uncertainty.
Well, just to clarify, not that Obama caused it, but that Obama deepened it and has prevented us from.
That's not what he's saying, though.
No, he admits
he's not clarifying that message, though.
He doesn't say Obama caused.
And let's not forget that Obama, when he took office, whoever you want to place the blame on, whether it was the previous administration, although I think it was, and we won't get into that at this point, or whether it was just because of the circumstances of the business environment at the time, when Obama took office, the economy was in freefall. And we were losing, 800,000 jobs a month. No one can deny that. Fine. And Obama comes in office.
And he stopped the free fall.
He
gets credit for stopping the free fall, but what he also deserves blame for is not resurrecting the economy to a level that was higher than when it was prior to before the free fall. And so basically what the argument is that Obama can keep the economy from continuing to go into free fall, which isn't necessarily a horrible argument. It's fine. My argument for which I would imagine Romney will be making, or any Republican nominee, is that a Republican president, or any president other than Obama, could actually accelerate this economy back to a level where it once was. Under Obama, it has remained stagnant. It's not going to free fall, so he's not horrible. He's not a socialist, crazy person who wants people in the streets running around with pitchforks, but at the same time, he has no comprehension or ability or desire even to rev this economy up once again.
But you know what? Here's the problem with Romney, okay? I don't agree with you. I do think that Obama's policies are the right ones in terms of bringing the...
Where's the evidence of that, though?
But take a step back for a minute. What's Romney's plan to get the economy out of the depths of despair?
I could tell you what it is.
Wait. I'll tell you what my view is, what he says. It's we want to deregulate. We want to repeal what he calls Obamacare,
right.
Which is the Affordable Care Act. And he wants to decrease taxes further. And what's crazy about Romney's platform, he wants to go back to the same policies that were in effect when the economy's bottom fell out. And he essentially wants to revert back to those policies that caused the whole mess. This whole notion of trickle-down economics was going to fix the problem all the time, when in reality the financial sector under Bush was highly unregulated. We had trading of these mortgage-backed securities like they were candy. We had recklessness, and that, if anything, those things are what caused the economy to bottom out, and rather the bottom fall out and the economy to fall apart. And everyone agrees that Wall Street went crazy. And what did the Congress do? They passed the Dodd-Frank Act, which many people say it doesn't go far enough. But regardless if you
and many people say it goes too far, and it's unlimited.
How does it go too far? No one's made the case of how it goes too far.
I'll make the case of how it's gone too far in the sense that there is unlimited ability for new regulations to be proposed under it. So to this day, people are still unsure what exactly the eventual scope of Dodd-Frank will be.
Uncertainty.
And uncertainty is the hugest impediment to recovery right now, and I'll give you the exact reason why. To this day, Obamacare, which is many people affectionately refer to it as, has yet to fully even go into effect. So many businesses are delaying hiring full-time employees because they don't understand. Nobody can comprehend the cost.
No one's provided any evidence.
There is tons of evidence.
No.
Because they cannot comprehend the cost of what this will be.
That's not true, Matt. Come on, you know better than that.
I know. As good as that.
That is so not true.
It is extremely true.
That is not true. What extra costs are employers going to incur because of Affordable Care Act?
Because insurance prices are going up.
That's not true.
How is it not true?
Have not gone up.
Of course they go up.
Cite a study that shows that they've gone up.
I will cite common sense because
they've actually gone down.
Why have they gone? Why would insurance prices go down if you're paying for insurance for everyone in the country? Well, this is the fuzzy math that Obama believes in. You posed an interesting question, which I'm not ignoring. I mean, I do recognize that what led us to financial ruin initially was Wall Street people gaming the system and taking advantage of regulators who weren't doing anything, which is probably a minor issue, a result of a bloated federal government who's trying to do so many things that they can't actually concentrate on the important things. Like, I think you have streamlined regulators really focusing on the most potentially dangerous things to our whole economic system, and enforce the laws on the books, which weren't being done because honestly morons work at the SEC.
I actually don't necessarily disagree.
So,
I mean, look at Madoff. Madoff's a great example.
Right, Madoff is a great example.
The SEC blew that.
Yeah, because they have idiots working idiots work in the federal government, and this is what needs to be said. Mitt Romney should be proudly championing the fact that he's going to fire people. He should be saying, "Yes, I love firing people, firing inefficient people." And there's so many inefficient people in government. There's so many inefficient agencies in government that if I'm president, I'm going to fire agencies. I'm going to fire people and shove them into the private sector and force people to work harder.
See, that's the problem. Okay. There's this whole notion that the government, that the conservatives have in government, the government's too fat. We need to downsize the government. But you know what? When you talk about the government being too fat, you're talking about real people, real lives, real jobs. What do? You just lay them all off and tell them to go fend for themselves in a marketplace.
What's the counter argument, though?
The unemployment rate is 8.5%. You can't do that now.
Okay.
Now's not the time.
You're right. You can't do that under Obama because
Obama. How about what Obama's proposing now? He's proposing taking these 6 different agencies and consolidating and streamlining. And one of the ways to do it is to get rid of positions through attrition. Right? You don't replace people as they leave. Right? You don't fire them or lay them off. That's a more responsible approach. Look, the federal government got fat because Republicans and Democrats alike, right? Republicans and Democrats alike.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's the Tea Party.
Contributed to it.
That's the whole Tea Party line.
Now people's lives are at stake. So you can't fire them.
You can't justify keeping...
It's that attitude that's not going to get Romney elected.
And it's that attitude that will keep America from thriving and returning to a source, an element of prosperity. If the argument is we must keep people employed who are inefficient and who are dragging down the entire system.
It's not, but you don't, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you don't make a change overnight. And
fine, nobody's saying overnight. Let me compliment you and tell you what your problem is in the same sentence. Are you ready? You, to your credit, are thinking big. You're thinking of what actually needs to be done, okay? You know who isn't? Your president right now.
That's not true.
It is very true because President Obama is focused on one thing and one thing only. Grand bargain, my butt.
He was all for a massive deficit reduction.
Grand bargain was a load of crap.
And you know what? Eric Cantor walked out of the room on it. Talk about disrespect.
Because all the spending,
talk about not getting anything done in Congress.
Because all the suggested proposed spending cuts weren't going to take effect till many years from now, when who knows what could have taken place prior to then. There needs to be real reform immediately now.
No, because he wanted to raise taxes. That's the real problem.
Because Obama didn't want anything to take place before his re-election. He wanted all the entitlement reforms to take place in his second term, when he's already pulled the hood over everyone.
Right. So you admit that he's getting re-elected. You admit that you think he's getting re-elected.
In Obama's head, he most certainly is going to get re-elected, and this is what I'm crediting you with. You want to handle big things, you want to handle big issues now. President Obama does not. He wants re-election at all costs, at any cost, and is not willing to do anything. Why else does he dismiss the Simpson-Bowles deficit reduction with bipartisan...
Because the Republicans will never agree to it.
That's why.
All those Republicans, those candidates on the stage all said... 10-1, we will decrease the deficit.
They didn't all say that. Huntsman didn't, but not that Huntsman is anyone worth getting excited about.
Huntsman, who's never has a prayer in the Republican nomination. Right. They all said, if we will decrease the deficit by 10 times by every dollar, $10 for every dollar that you increase taxes, would you agree to that?
No, and I wouldn't either. You know why? Because the government is too big now. They don't need one more dollar there. Every dollar that goes there is another dollar wasted. And until spending gets completely under control, there's no need for any more money to be sent to Washington.
Matt,
we're coming up on our end here.
Tell me, how would you deal with the activity that led to the financial crisis? How would you deal with that activity? Romney wants to deregulate and ignore the problem. And if Romney gets elected and his policies get put in place, there's a much higher potential that we could have another Great Recession again, because he wants to return to the policies that were in place that fostered the economy.
That's not entirely true. No, I mean, they don't want to deregulate to the point of nothing. They would like to deregulate to what your President Clinton, who was a much better president than President Obama, who was...
But arguably, Clinton also contributed to this downfall. I mean, he was part of deregulating...
But again, my point is that the people in the SEC were not smart enough to know what was going on.
So let me get this straight. Your position is that we don't need more regulations. We need better people and more efficiency in enforcing the regulations.
Done. We've reached agreement. Yes. I think we should wrap up this week's show on a point of agreement.
I don't think that works.
We need less government, more efficient government, smarter government.
No,
we don't need smarter government. We don't need more efficient government.
That's not going to... I agree that we need all those things. We need efficient
This is the
government.
faulty argument.
I don't agree that we necessarily need smaller government.
Which is a good life philosophy. More necessarily doesn't equate with better. Like, why do you think instantly, just by flooding a problem with government regulators and government regulations, it'll instantly fix the problem? The fact is, it overburdens the problem. It clouds the situation. It crowds out other people from actually finding solutions to the problem.
But see, it's not about whether government needs to be smaller or bigger. It's so easy to say, oh, we have more regulations, that's bigger government, we can't have that. You know what? Like I just mentioned, a proposal to consolidate agencies that we don't need it anymore, or that we don't need them in the way that they're formed right now. That's what we need to do.
Fine, that's a no-brainer. Nobody's disputing that.
We need to focus on the agencies of government that do need streamlining and do need reform. But that doesn't mean that anytime there's a proposed regulation to deal with a potential danger to our country, whether it's financial ruin or environmental harms that are caused, that all of a sudden means that we're fattening the government, and it's bad.
It is fattening government, and
that's
it is
so
bad.
draconian. And the Affordable Care Act does help to address some of the biggest problems we have is uninsured people in this country. But the biggest problem, in my view, is that insurance companies stand to profit from people who need health insurance. And,
fine,
and why would it be so bad? Ooh, call me a socialist, call me anti-capitalistic. If I said insurance companies shouldn't profit from people who need insurance, why should there be any profit at all? I think profit needs to be stripped out of the whole insurance industry.
And I'll give you the easy answer, which happens to be the accurate right answer. The profit motive ultimately drives people, companies, businesses, society to provide the most efficient services, the best services, period.
That's actually not true.
It is true because
what's the best services? Denying coverage because someone has a pre-existing condition? I mean, that's the best?
There are ways around. You don't need a whole huge national system to fix small problems like that. And
it's so easy to say, oh, it's fatter government. Right. Oh, wait, it's uncertainty for businesses. But how do we deal with our people?
I'll tell you how you deal with the people. Well, honestly, you know what the best answer for Mitt Romney to say, just to wrap this up full circle, is that healthcare, if Massachusetts is very happy with Romney Care. It's the
Affordable Care Act.
One alternative, and I'm not even saying it's the best alternative, but I'm saying it's a better alternative than one-size-fits-all federal government, is for every state to handle the healthcare crisis in a unique way that satisfies the needs and desires of the residents who live in that state. That's better. It's cheaper. And it's more tailor-needed to whoever.
It's actually not better.
It can't be much worse than Obamacare.
It's terrible. How would we as Americans, and this is what I actually take issue with Romney's whole defense of his healthcare law in Massachusetts, that's a state issue, and that was right for our state in Massachusetts. So you mean to tell me it's right in certain states for almost everyone to have healthcare, but in let's say Massachusetts, but it's not right for in a state like Indiana for everyone to have healthcare?
It's right for the people. Like this is the whole problem.
That's not American.
No, you know what's not American is telling other people what is or what isn't American. That's what's not American. Yeah. There needs to be safety nets. Nobody's disputing that, and they exist. So right now the safety nets exist. You go to an emergency room if you need services and you don't need health care. I mean, paint this image that Republicans are running around like eager to smack people with baseball bats, when in reality...
No, I don't think so, but I do think they want people left out in the cold.
They don't want people left out in the cold. They want people inside in the warm, and they think the best way to achieve that is not for government to hold a gun to their head and buy health care and tell them what to do at every stage of their life.
It's not about telling people what to do.
Of course it is. That's exactly what Obamacare is. Obamacare mandates everyone buy health insurance. That's telling people something to do.
That's not the issue.
That is the issue. That's the issue that will be debated at the Supreme Court. Right. Whether that ability of the federal government to force people to do something is constitutional.
But see, that's the debate that the Republicans want to frame. They want to frame a debate that you're infringing on our rights. You're making us do something we shouldn't have to commit to doing. It's not right. It's not constitutional. But the real debate, the real issue is, as a society in 2012, we cannot stand for our people, for, I don't know, whatever the percentages are, 40% of our people to be uninsured. We can't stand for that. We won't stand for that. we need to stand up and deal with that issue. And that's what the president tried to do with the Health Care Act.
And he tried and failed, because
No,
quite
he didn't.
frankly, he did fail. If he didn't get one Republican to sign on, like, where was this leader who was supposed to be post-partisan, who was supposed to be not the president of the red states or the blue states, but the red, white, and blue
Maybe
states?
that's a great topic for our next.
I think that will be a great
next
topic.
show.
The failed expectations of President Obama. How did he go wrong? Where did he go wrong? And we will continue with all of that next week. But overall, this was fun.
Yes, it was fun. I think I learned that I'm more right than I thought I was when we did today's discussion. You're more wrong. So
I think that's a great way. I'm glad you helped your ego out with that statement. And so we will continue this each and every week, right up through election season, when hopefully my words of wisdom will help contribute to the downfall of Obama.